Hello everyone, Carol Undy here again at last with another tutorial for you, and today we're going to look at putting stippling around our design for a quilt as you go type block. And so I'm just going to start right away, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a square that will be stippling eventually the size of my block. So to do that, we just come over to our square tool and we click and drag to make a square, and I'm just putting step fill in there at the moment, don't worry about that, and that's filled with a step fill, and it's not an actual square. What we need to do is make this the size of our block, and we could have carefully measured the grid and all that sort of thing, but the easiest way is to just make a big square close to the size of your block. Right click on that square after you've selected it. I've just got to get to the select tool and right click on the block, and if you come along here to the general tab, you can actually put in your dimensions here. Now we're not going to scale the square we've done, because that would be just proportional scaling would be making it smaller but keeping the proportion of the height to the width. We actually want to put in the same number in both of these squares, so we'll just type them in. So I'm going to make these, I'm in millimeters, so I'm going to make these 130, and I'll just tab to my next square and make that 130 as well, and tab, and I'm happy with that. Now if you're in inches, that's fine, you can put your inches in. If your block pattern is in inches and you're in millimeters, you will need to convert and just type in the right figure. You can change your software to read inches from millimeters, but it's a long complicated process, and it's just as quick to convert your measurements to millimeters if you generally digitize in millimeters, and for the odd quilting size you need. So just type in the size of your block. Now this is the block finished. We don't want to stipple too far into the seam allowances, so this is your finished size of your block without counting the seam allowances. Alright, so we've got that in there, and we apply it, and that will change it to a square, and we go OK. So now we've got a square of stitching, and I know it's not stippling yet, but just bear with me. Now I'm going to change the colour of that, because that's one of the colours in the design I'm going to use, and it could get confusing. So I'm just going to change the colour. Now these are all the colours in the design I'm going to use, because that's the last design I had open when I was practicing. So I'm going to go to thread colours, and there's 5 colours in the design. I'm going to add another colour, 6, and go apply, and there's my 6th colour here. It's come out as brick red. That'll do fine. It's different to all the other colours. If I wanted to, I could choose another colour down here and assign it to that number 6, but we won't bother. The brick red's different to all the others, and that will work for us. So we'll go OK. So now I'm going to select this and change the colour to brick red. Alright, it looks brown on the screen, I know. Well, it does on mine anyway. Don't worry about it. It's just a different colour. So now we're going to bring in our design. Now I've got my computer set to group any design I bring in on bringing it in, so we've got to make sure it is grouped when it comes in, because this time I'm going to insert the design, because I want it to come in into this same screen. So I'm going to go File, Insert Design. Alright, 1, 2, 3, I think this is the one I want, so we'll go Open. So this is in your seasons, in your software, in your seasons folder, and it is design number FQ403-48. Okay, now these are not centered, so we need to center them, even though on my hoop I have got automatic centering highlighted. Okay, it hasn't come in centered for some reason. The software quite often does funny things, but it is grouped. I can see it's grouped because it's got the group icons over here in the film strip in the corners, and also if I select any part of the design, the whole design highlights, so I know it's grouped, so that's good. So I can select the design and hold down my Shift key and select the outline. I'm just going to go back to, I'm going to click off there. I'm going to go out of artistic view for the rest of, for a little while, so that you can actually see what's happening. So if I left click on the design, the whole design selects because it's grouped together. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and left click on the background. Now everything is selected. I could have gone edit select all. Now you need your design grouped, because if you do the next step and it wasn't grouped, you're going to get a really strange thing. Everything's going to pile up in the middle. So make sure you do group that design before you do this. So we're going to go down to our alignment tools and we're going to align centers. So that's the last one on your alignment tools that has a red line going horizontally and vertically. So that's going to bring everything into the center. Click off to deselect. So as you can see now, our design is nicely centered in there. Now let's just select the background here for a moment, and we're going to change that to the stipple, because I want to show you what happens if you do it this way. It's not the way I'm going to end up doing it, but okay, so it's now a stipple, and as you can see, the stipple goes right through. It's the whole square, so it's going under the design, under the stitching, and in the spaces between, and that's not the most desirable look in my opinion. So you could go remove overlaps by selecting the design and go remove overlaps. And as you can see over here in the film strip, it has taken out a lot of the design, but it says no stipple stitches can be generated due to stipple settings and or object sizes. Click undo and try again with stipple settings adjusted for the object size. Now the reason that's happened is because I'm just going to go OK. These little areas here, and if you look on the film strip you can see they've tried to stipple in those areas, but they could as separate objects in all these gaps, so it hasn't been very successful. And so I'm just going to undo, because that's what the software asked me to do. It's not happy with this, and there, it's gone again, so we've got complete stipple again. So that wasn't the nicest way to do it. If you had a solid design you would get a slightly better result, but the stippling would still come. Let me just zoom in and put it in artistic view for you. Okay, even if you had a solid design that filled in all these gaps, your stippling would still come in a little bit, because remove overlaps actually leaves, only removes slightly inside the edge of the design, so you would still get stippling running into your design, and that's not, in my opinion, the most desirable look. Okay, so we're going to go 1 to 1 again. So what I'm going to do is change that back. I've still got it selected to the step fill for a moment. Alright, now what would be nice is if the stippling came in and left a little bit of a gap, sort of a halo effect around that isn't stippled around the design. And so how we're going to do that is select the design. Let me just go back out of artistic view so you can see what I'm selecting. So select the design and then come over here to your outline design tool. It's the third one from the bottom in the middle column. Left click on that. You'll get your little dialog box open. I've put 5mm offset because I'm in millimeters. If you're in inches, 1/4 of an inch maximum, maybe even 1/8 of an inch, somewhere between there, but 5mm seem to be okay for me. And I only want one outline, and I want it single. So I've got all those selected and I go OK. And as you can see, it's made a line around the design. Okay. Now, the next step, it's made it the same color as the last object in the design. So what we need to do is click on our Show Individual Objects so that we can come down to the bottom, and that outline will be separate. Otherwise, it's hooked in with the objects in the design. Another way to do it is to change the color of the last piece to another color in the design, and I might just do that so that we don't have any confusion, and actually that's part of it as well. So we'll go Shift. It's created a little diamond in the middle here. I don't really want that, so I'm going to delete that. Let me just put it in artistic view and explain why. Okay, if I zoom in, it's created a little circle here because the gap was big enough for it to outline as well. I don't want that. I just want this outline around the outside. So if you get any of these, just delete them. So I'm going to delete that. That's gone. So I've now just got this outline here. Actually, I'll leave it the colour. That's fine. No, I won't. I'll change it. I'm always changing my mind. So I'm going to select that one, that outline, and I'm going to change the colour to the green so you can see it really clearly. Okay, see that there? Right, and now we'll just zoom out to show all. Right, so we've got that outline going around there. And what I'm going to do is move that outline up to just below the background. So grab hold of it, drag it up to the top, and drop it just below the background. There it is. Okay, the next step is, while it's still selected, or reselected if you've deselected it, is we're going to change it to a fill stitch. So we're going to come down here to our fill, and it's a step fill now. Okay, so select the green, that is this new shape here, and use the remove overlaps. Now it's happening, and now you can see we've got this lovely hole here that goes around the design. So I can now delete that green, don't need it anymore, and I've got a lovely hole around my design with a sort of halo effect around the design. Now I can just select my brick red part, the background, and change it to a stipple. Down here on your stipple, a stipple run. There you go. And I'll deselect it. Now when you deselect it, you do see this black line around here. Don't worry about that. It does not stitch. It is just the shape. You can see a black line around the square. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see a black line around the outside as well. It's these two lines are just containers for the stipple run. They don't stitch. Now if you don't like the size of your stipple, you can select it and right click on it, and you've got options here to change the loop spacing, which will make the stippling smaller or larger. So let's just move this out of the way so you can see. If I change the loop spacing to 4 and go apply, you can see I've got much smaller stippling. Now remember, the smaller you go with your stippling, the stitch length might need to be reduced as well to get around the corners easily. Run count, we can go, let's go 5 so we can see a difference, and apply that. So that's how many times it goes over the top of each other. So that can be quite bold because it goes quite a number of times. Usually for quilting, 1 is sufficient. And your inset step is how far away from the actual boundary, these lines, the black lines I was talking about, which show when you selected it as pink, how far in from those it's going to stipple. Now I'm going to change that to 5 and go apply to show you that. And as you can see, it actually brings in from the outside edge and brings it in from this inside edge as well. Now occasionally, so if you wanted to, if you hadn't left seam allowance here and you wanted to, you could bring it in, but it would also affect this area here. But that can be useful sometimes, but sometimes you can have funny things happen, like a gap here because there wasn't quite enough room, and just a single line here to create, there wasn't enough room there to create any stippling. You could reduce the size of your stippling and you might get a little bit of stippling running down here, but you can go too small with your stippling too, so you don't want to exaggerate that. I just use this as an exaggerated demonstration so you could see what the tool actually did. So let's just pop that back to 1, apply, and we're fine. So I think that comes in 1 millimetre from the edge, something like that. Alright, that's about all there is to it. I hope you like that method because it's more or less foolproof. You're going to get a nice result. You can create all sorts of other stipple shapes to use, like corner shapes and things too, if you don't want it to fill the whole hoop. That's entirely up to you. See you at the next video.